Welcome to EO Secrets, Episode 5. If you're a podcaster, listen closely to the show. It may just be what you need to make your podcast monetize. If you're listening on iTunes, you'll have to go over to eosecrets.com and look at the YouTube clip or look at the post. And what I want to show you real fast, a little bit of cleanup before we get into the show, is if you come to the landing page, this is a landing page, you'll probably see it change a little bit, but you get your name and email address, it's lead generation, it's for our emails. But if you want to get, when you get there, just remember to go right down here and you can skip right to the blog and it'll bring you to the blog, which is the home episodes. You can always click here to go through the blog and you can see the prior episodes. So just want to do a little bit of cleanup so people understand that that's called a welcome gate. Good way to get names. As long as I'm here, I'll show you some of the other tabs real fast. And the launch, EOTV, of course, is the station. And secrets, you have to have a password to get in there. So anyway, that is the website. So let's get right back into the episode. And we're going to be talking about some things today. Let me tell you, we'll come over here. Here is the outline of the show. So the outline today, we're going to talk about podcasters. And what's a podcaster? How do they make money? And what do they do? We're going to talk about the good, the bad, the ugly, what they suffer from, and what they enjoy doing. We're also going to talk about how they monetize. So I'll go through that relatively fast, but I want to do first, before we get into that portion, I'm going to go ahead and play a little clip here. So listen to the clip, then we'll get on and finish the podcasters part. We'll go into a quick book review, and we'll talk just briefly about enrollment kits and doTERRA. So without further ado, let's get right into this episode.
Is number one, you have to have that passion. Number two, you have to be consistent. And number three, you have to be willing to open up. And for me, the open up part was very difficult and is actually part of the reason I started podcasting, because I have always been such a shy introvert, and this provided me an avenue to open up. But when we're talking about new podcasts, I think the one thing that happens is procrastination happens for such a long period of time that they finally give up. They continue to read that you need to do this and that. Or
can I tell a secret right now that you're pregnant?
Yes.
Second
not a
child.
secret to many anymore. Yeah. Second child due in about 6 weeks from the date of this recording. So
and you get around too. You were like, what? We were in Las Vegas not long ago and you were out there.
I was jet setting across the country this past spring, getting all my traveling and my conferences in while I could, because my last event, I went to Podcast New England a few weeks ago. And that was my last, that was just an hour from where I live. So, but that was my last conference until probably the spring. I don't know what's going on this fall.
Yeah, you get out and about. And, for the listener, people in the podcasting world know who you are. You're at the conferences. You have great services for podcasters. But tell the listener what you do. Some of these are new podcasters. Some of these have never podcasted before.
Absolutely. I am the founder of interviewconnections.com, and we are the premier source for booking outstanding podcast guests. So in addition to having 2 podcasts of my own and a web TV show, which is a video podcast as well on iTunes, I run Interview Connections with a team, virtual staff, and we work with podcasters to find and book and coordinate their guest interviews. And we also work with entrepreneurs to get them booked as a guest on other shows. So reaching out to podcasters, pitching them as a guest, and making those interview connections.
Yep. And making a living. And I don't know how you do it all. I honestly don't know how. I know how much work it is to podcast.
Yeah, it's a lot.
And tell us about your network.
So the Archaeology Podcast Network, our focus is on public education and outreach. I've got, it's rotating around a little bit, but I've got 18 to 22 hosts that I co-host or host entirely 6 shows on the network. And then all the other shows, I don't have any involvement at all in the content creation of those, but we do the editing and post-production and uploading of those and tracking the social media and things like that. But all of our hosts are, they're either graduate level archaeologists or professional archaeologists in one way or another. And they do this for a living and they podcast on the side. So
very good.
Yeah.
So, my hat's off. I know how much time it takes. And how many do you edit a week?
Oh, right now we've got, because we have a daily show that we're running for 2017, it's only 5 to 15 minutes, but it's every single day of the year.
Uh-huh.
And that makes it about 9 to 10 episodes a week that go up.
I spent around technology because I do technology recruiting as well. I go on the road about 6 weeks a year to go to local universities and some Maryland and Dallas and such. But we're really looking for the best technology students to come back to Omaha and work for us. So I spend a lot of my time doing that. About 5 years ago, I got into this thing called podcasting. I was hearing it was just starting to get really hot. Those were the days of John C. Dvorak and those guys with Cranky Geeks. And that was kind of my introduction to podcasting. And I thought, man, I want to do that. And so I looked around, and I didn't actually start podcasting by myself. I actually joined somebody's show. So I listened to a podcast, and I wrote the guy and said, it was Dave McCabe over at Home Server Show. And I said, man, I'd love to, if you ever want to do an interview with me, I'd love to just be on one time. And he said to me, well, I've kind of got a plan and I'll get back to you. And I didn't hear from him for months, and my heart was broken. And he finally contacted me one April and said, Jim, you want a podcast? And he invited us on. We haven't stopped. That was like show 40, and we are on show almost 300 at this point. So I was bit by podcasting, and I love doing it. It's one of those kinds of things. I love it so much I took it to work. So 2 years ago, Gallup started letting me webcast. We call it webcasting because nobody at work knew what a podcast was. I'd say podcast, and they were like, what? And we said, how about webcast? And they're like, oh, yeah, I know what that is. And so we rebranded it inside the organization as a webcast, and that's worked really well. And so I get the opportunity at least once a week, sometimes 2, sometimes 3. I get an opportunity to webcast at work around our Strengths Finder product into our Strengths community. And so it's awesome. I mean, it's great to be a podcaster. I do a couple shows on my own. I have a Home Gadget Geeks one that I do. That's kind of the flagship show. We do one called Cyber Frontiers. I'm on Saturday mornings with Dave Jackson on Ask the Podcast Coach. Wednesday nights, either Surface Geeks or Home Server Show. And then at Gallup, we have one called Called to Coach. That's for our coaches. We have one called Theme Thursday that we do. And then I do a bunch of interviews and strength spotlights and stuff. So you say I'm probably pretty busy doing podcasts.
So at Gallup, who does all your editing?
Well, that's great. When we first started, I did, which was a lot of work. But we actually have audio, video guys that work for us, and that's all they do. So it's awesome because I have an editor that does my blog post for me. So at Gallup, I literally sit down and schedule the interviews. I do all the interview scheduling, but I have people that help me get the guests, get them booked, send them equipment, those kinds of things, prep them for the call. I bring them on, I do the recording. Then after that, I've got some folks that do the editing, that write the blog posts, that get it posted. I manage that team. So I started doing everything, but they started adding team members to it as we got better. So it's awesome having an editor to help you do your work. I'm not going to lie.
That's a good lead in to sort of the next question. In podcasting, what do you think the good, bad, and ugly?
Did a little work in the advertising and marketing world, which I really, really loved. And luckily found my way here to Entrepreneur on Fire, working with John Lee Dumas. We're both partners in business and in life, which is great fun. And I just launched my podcast about 1 year ago, having so much fun with it. Really, my goal with launching the podcast was not only to start making a connection with our audience, because John started everything, so everybody knew John quite well, but I was very much more behind the scenes. So I didn't really have my voice out there, wasn't really at the forefront, which I liked, honestly. I kind of like being behind the scenes, but I knew that I had a lot of, systems and processes, focus-based implementation steps that I could share. So that's really why I started the podcast, to share that.
Very good. And I've listened to your podcast pretty much since day one. It's an audio blog. You actually write out your script first, correct?
Yeah, but definitely one that I think a lot of people have on their mind. I mean, I think more and more people are starting podcasts to monetize and to have a marketing arm for their business, which I think is incredibly smart. If you already have a business started, to add a podcast to that for actually some of the reasons that you just mentioned. I mean, you get to know somebody quite quickly when you listen to their voice daily or weekly. You gain credibility and authority through doing that with your audience, trust, likability, all that good stuff that, podcasts are very powerful for that reason. So I think much more people start podcasts for a specific reason pertaining to their business versus hobbyists. That's just been my experience. And the people that tend to come to us to work with us are ones who are looking to have it benefit their business in some way.
Very good. Welcome to Podcaster. This is like the 6th, 7th episode that I've recorded. It's probably ended up being episode 6. We have the least experienced podcaster to date on the show. I can give him a hard time, but he is so much more than just a podcaster. We're going to find out why he started his podcast, what his relationship is to me, and Jonathan Denwood. Everyone knows Jonathan if they've been around me. They'll see the links. He's got 52 shows on WP-Tonic. I've had, you know what? WP-Tonic's done a lot for me as much as WP-Tonic's for you. Jonathan, I'm going to let you talk. This is about you. Why did you become a podcaster? What led you that direction?
And like most things, it was meant to be. Obviously, you find that the best things are, the hand of God has a little bit to do with it. And I thought, old Bill, I don't know much about this geezer, but, we just give it a go. And if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out.
I can't remember if you did an episode on timelines of success first. I should just pull that up before we got into it.
I've been on there, but I don't.
Let me look at when you did it, because I know about 2 years ago, I came into the Reno Collective, and they have a wonderful WordPress meetup group, which Jonathan used to be a lot more active in. He's still active, but he was getting pretty good crowds, and he was leading it as one of the co-organizers. He stepped back a little bit because he started a SaaS product, and that's another story. But we met each other, and I think it may have taken. You're the only one that asked me, by the way, in the whole area about podcasting. I thought that was pretty. Actually, was serious and considered. A couple other business people did, but they didn't follow up. But you did, and it probably took about a year. I'm pulling up timelines right now. Timelines of success,
and kind of re-energized a little bit. So it has its ups and downs, doesn't it?
Yeah, Jonathan even knows what happens when I don't get enough sleep.
You go pretty manic.
Episode 11, Timelines of Success. Dave Jackson is often called the godfather of podcasting. He's been in podcasting since 2004 and is a leader in the industry. He runs the School of Podcasting. He's a great instructor and always looking for new and innovative ways to improve his school, his services, and training. But what he loves most is making a great podcast with great content. Today on Timelines of Success, we have Dave Jackson. He's the amazing man behind the School of Podcasting. Dave, welcome to the show. Give me your last 5 and 5.
My last 5 and 5. Well, let's see. That would be Money Plan SOS with Steve Stewart. He's the guy that he says you need to pay attention instead of paying interest. It's a new podcast I just started listening to. It's really good stuff. WordPress plugins A to Z, and this is Marcus Couch and John Overall, and they basically go through different plugins that because there's a billion coming out every day, and they kind of give they rate 3 each, so you end up hearing about 6 plugins when you're there. I listened to the Unnamed Church. That's a kind of a faith-based podcast from Reverend Ken Blanchard. Then I listened to Online Marketing and let me see here, Communications. Ask the Podcast Coach for March 14th, 2015.
Let's get ready to podcast.
Yeah! I say yeah! It is Saturday morning. It's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time. It's time for Ask the Podcast Coach, everyone. Hey, we're going to get your podcast questions answered.
Welcome to episode 128. Today, we continue with the Masters of Podcasting. Now, the reason why we have these shows is because we are creating a show called Podcaster's Home. Well, Rob Welch probably had more influence than anyone else on me not creating Podcaster's Home. So without further ado, let's get right into the episode with Rob Welch and the show that never was, Podcaster's Home. Rob, welcome to the new show, Podcaster. This is episode 5. We're still developing the show, and I think we've got probably the number one expert in podcasting, at least in my book, in the country, here today on podcastershome.com. So, Rob, tell us all the magic about podcasting, solve all my problems, all the podcasters' problems out there. How are you going to solve my problems today?
Go to Libsyn.com and sign up.
So you're marketing. There's 3 things you have to do if you want to make a living or make a little money while you podcast. And one of them is marketing, right?
Right. I mean, first thing you want to do it for free, you want to learn free, and you've learned from this, is go into iTunes and you can search for Podcast 101. It's a free book. It'll give you all the information to teach you on how to podcast. Everything from A to Z, getting you started and all the way through to hosting, to submitting to iTunes and Stitcher and all the other stuff. And it's a free book. I don't charge anything for it. And I've always made that available for people to learn from so that they can then go get a webinar, create that on their own, and then charge other people for the webinar.
Talking about, I have something called bottom line up front. I always talk about getting right to the point, and you just got right to the point, podcast up. But now we finished. We sort of created the whole podcast. It's an MP3 ready to go. So now we got to find a place to host it. So who should I use for a hosting service?
Well, obviously I'm biased, and I'll tell you to use who I've used for the last 10 plus years, and that's Libsyn. And I've worked for Libsyn for the last 8 plus years. Libsyn's the biggest by far. If you go into iTunes, look at the top 200 shows, you're going to see 35% roughly are hosting on Libsyn. And it's the big shows that you know of, Mark Maron, all the Nerdist shows, all the Slate shows, Joe Rogan, Welcome to Night Vale, Hardcore History with Dan Carlin, Common Sense with Dan Carlin as well, and just many others that people have heard of. Good chance that they are a Libsyn show, especially when you look at the top 200.
It's just like I'm born ready to do a podcast anytime.
Yep. It's awful hard here in Reno, and you're in Hawaii today.
Yeah, well, I'm always in Hawaii, but with no trade winds, so it's pretty miserable here. It feels like Guam.
Yeah, there must be a high pressure going across the country right now and going into Hawaii because it's really hot here too. So let's get into this podcast. First of all, tell us how you got into podcasting. I know you had a career in the Navy. You got out, you did some tech work or something, and then you ended up in podcasting. So how did that go? How did that happen?
Well, actually, I was still in the Navy, and I got hurt in 2004. I broke my back, and they grounded me from flying and set me on a desk. And instead of, you know how it is when you're broke in the military.
Okay, wasn't that wonderful listening to all of these podcasters? Now, one thing that they all have in common, they're passionate about podcasting. All of them make money too. That's another thing they have in common. They're different levels, but all these podcasters to some extent bring in some money or work at monetizing. Some bring in a lot more than others. Some work for podcasting companies, but they all work in some aspect of monetization. So even Jim Collins, who I know Jim has a job, I'm mentioning Jim, he still makes money. I think he gives away a lot of the money he makes on his podcast, and he supports a lot of different people with different elements. He doesn't do it as a business, but for the most part, everyone on this list makes money in podcasting. So we got two things. You have to be passionate about podcasting. And if you want longevity, unless it's truly just a hobby, and some people it is, you probably need to monetize. So that's a pain point for a lot of podcasters. They use affiliate marketing. Amazon is a pretty good way to start in affiliate marketing. It's a lot of work. I've had to redo my site many times because Amazon changes the link, and I have to go back and set the paths up and reset up a new code. So it's a lot of work. It's not passive by any means, but you can make money on the affiliate marketing side. Marketing a business you already have, this by far is the best way to make money. And we do it with real estate here in Reno. When we do local podcasts, they'll refer to their friends. We get relationships, and I have tracked literally over $50,000 a year into the podcast, into the leads that are generated and the people who buy property through my wife because of the podcast. Products, creating a digital product. This is a lot of work. Digital products are not easy to create. You have to understand the different components and systems. I won't go into a lot of detail now. I'm putting out Podcasters Home. I've done a free product, but it takes some time. So digital product is not an overnight success type thing. Membership sites, that goes right into digital products. Sometimes you'll create a membership site behind your digital product to help boost or ways to get paid. You're going to have to know a lot, though, to create a membership site where you get paid. You're probably going to have either an expert around you or going to have to spend a lot of time learning. You're going to have to learn about shopping carts and gates and links to Stripe and funding and PayPal. It goes on and on, but you can do it. You have to work at it. Books, podcasting and books, great combination. The podcast promotes the book promotes the podcast. Good combination if they're hooked in together right. But take a lot of work. I mean, you got to work at a book. Coaching with your podcast, that another will work too, but you have to figure out a way to get paid from your coaching. And it's a business in itself. It's definitely not passive. And you can coach on anything you might be an expert at. It could be even podcasting, or it could be cutting hair or cooking or coaching, and it could be anything that you can coach with. But again, it's work. It is a job. Speaking engagements, podcasting speaking is wonderful. I've spoken a couple times at different places. I'm going to speak in Sacramento on the 17th of September at WordCamp. If you're in Sacramento, come by. It's only $40 if you can get a ticket. I think it's sold out. Online stores. That's a lot like Zillow. There's several different organizations. Online stores, pretty simple, or SaaSes are straightforward. And then there's another thing I don't have on this list here. It's the donation. Put a donation button on. I know somebody making $5,000 a month through donation, but you have to have just an excellent podcast with a big crowd to get people to donate. And you've got to appeal for them to donate. And then finally, let's talk about MLMs or direct marketing. Well, I'm going to take the word direct marketing out because we're doing this online. It's not face-to-face. It's through a podcast. It's through a webinar. It's through video, whatever that might be. Through direct marketing, it's unique. MLMs, a lot of people are scared of. But if you do it right and you're comfortable, you can market through your podcast. And those people who would donate may well get into a product if it's a good product. I picked doTERRA. I think it's an excellent oil. I've used it for 2 years before I started marketing it. And as we go to the next portion, or after we talk about Bold, I will talk a little bit about enrollment kits. And I'll talk a little bit more about how you can use an MLM to build a mastermind as well as enhance and monetize your podcast. So if you're a podcaster, I really believe that this is probably your best way to make the most money is through the MLM, in this case, doTERRA. I'd love to have you join our group. So let's go on now to the book review and go to Bold. Bold is how to go big, create wealth, and impact the world. Well, what they do in Bold is they talk about all the new technologies, and the smartphone is one of them. And go no further than to think of the power in the smartphone. It is huge compared to just 15 years ago. There's so much in here. And just think how it has expanded podcasts and the different ways that we can use smartphones, from apps to podcasting to just talking and chatting and going back and forth on whether it's Skype or it's FaceTime, whatever that might be. Amazing tool. And you can use that in your business, whether it's coaching, whatever that might be. Without this has changed the world. The cloud. He talks a lot about the cloud and social media. The cloud has allowed us to expand in SaaS, software as a service, create great things, and expand where we couldn't do it in the past because we didn't have the capital. I use Amazon S3. I'm just scraping the service. I use it for links. It's just so fast and so inexpensive. And that's an example of server space that as you need more, you just expand and you can expand your business. And some businesses can come very strong, very fast without all the capital outlay. Now, and then finally, they talk about the Skunk Works in the book. The Skunk Works was in World War II in Lockheed. They basically figured out how they could build war products, in this case, planes, very fast. So they put a team together. They would provide everything that team needs, but they'd make that team focus at nothing but creating that product and getting it out the door. And they would think out of the tank. They were separate from the company, and they were just a small group of people who would get things done. They actually created the first jet in less than 145 days. So those are the concepts and ideas you can bring to your podcast. You can bring to your monetization, whatever you might do. Focus in on doing it and do it every day and make it happen. So the next thing and final thing we're going to do today is we're going to look at enrollment kits, and we're going to look at the process of how you get started. Okay, enrollment kits. I'm going to be very short here. Generally, I think it costs $32 a year to subscribe and be a part of doTERRA. And I'll show you that briefly, how to sign up after we go through the enrollment kits. But there are grouping enrollment kits. They vary from $150 all the way up to $2,500. I guess and some people do this, and a lot of very successful people do this, they jump in and buy one of these big kits, which has everything. I would say that if you're absolutely sure you're going to go build a business and you're going to do it this way, I guess that's what you do, because you're going to make your money back if you're absolutely committed to building a business. The way I went, which is a little slower, I looked at the oils for a while, and I started with a smaller kit. I actually bought a $550 kit, which had a lot of stuff. But in retrospect, if I just grabbed even the $150 kit and started studying the oils, and there's $250 kits, The first one I think I like best. It's got the diffuser kit. It's got small bottles of oil, and it'll get you into the system and to understand balance, lavender, melaleuca, doTERRA On Guard, Aroma Touch, Deep Blue, Wild Orange, and Peppermint are all wonderful oils. I would buy a tube of Deep Blue. I guess that's a reason to buy one of the larger ones too. But that's how I'd start. And then I would build into the products because you'll see the quality of the products and how good they are. And you'll build confidence in the system. The other thing I would do too, now that I didn't invest like the $2,500, I definitely start buying and getting used to buying what they say is 100 PV and an ml a month. And that's about $110 by the time you do shipping. And you pick out the oils that you want to buy each month and the new products you want to discover. And as you get into it more and more, and you start building a business, you'll probably accelerate that. But it's a good business. You'll have to rely on what I say. And if you want to just jump into it, go ahead and start out with $150. And I think you'll be satisfied and you'll like what you get. And you'll also be part of my team and you'll be part of the mastermind. And you're going to learn from each other. And if you're a podcaster, we're going to help each other grow those podcasts and figure out better ways to monetize. And again, I think this is one of the absolute best ways to monetize. So that's enough. We'll look at these different kits later. And what I want to do is show you how you would get going, how you'd start. Okay, each week we start something new. We change the website a little bit. And by popular demand, if you want to join, basically when you come to this page, you go up into launch. And if you don't want to call me, you just want to join right now and get your kit coming for $150, which will give you your membership. There's 2 different kits you can buy. Go ahead, join. I'll bring you to this page. Go continue. Now here's a little trick. It defaults to a wholeness customer. A lot of people just buy the oils, but the only difference to be a wellness advocate is you have to give your social security number. And that allows you to, same things as buying the oils, but you can also build an organization someday. So I would suggest you hit Wellness Advocate, go continue, then fill out the form, and it'll take you into the next step. And again, you can go ahead and buy the $150 kits. You'll see those. You'll want to buy those. And so if you don't want to call me and go direct and just surprise me, go ahead and you can sign up directly for $150. You're a podcaster, by the way. There's going to be more things that go along with EO Secrets. For example, if you're in your team, I'm going to have some podcast workshops that are free for our members of EO Secrets, as well as WordPress workshops for those who want to work on WordPress. So you get more than just the oils in the side of the house. You're going to get podcasting, training, as well as website building. Okay, it's been a long episode, but don't forget to subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on iTunes, please go and watch it on YouTube and subscribe, as well as go to iTunes and leave a rating and a review. Deeply appreciate it. Thank you, and we'll see you on the next episode of EO Secrets.